The subcommittee will come to order, and I thank you for your indulgence. It is interesting that this happens to be a full calendar day. A number of committees are meeting, which include committees that I participate in, and it seems like it is timely because we're listening to testimony of Mr. Liddy in one committee and discussing legislation regarding no more greed. And you would wonder why this is a timely hearing, because all of them are operating with the, if you will, somewhat shock of the Congress that laws that we've passed or that statements that we've made have not been, if you will, adhered to. We now are in a hearing where instructions have been given by this full committee and this subcommittee on the issue of cargo screening. And it's come to our attention that the full impact, full action on our instructions have not been pursued. It raises an issue of security to crisis level of great concern. And so this hearing is about fixing it, about the instructive oversight that we should have on these issues and about fixing it. And the subcommittee intends to work diligently to do so. Also, we will look forward to our hearings in the future being on a Tuesday, which will help all of us in terms of the schedule. So I thank all of you for your indulgence. I'm delighted to acknowledge the presence of the ranking member, Mr. Dent, the presence of the full committee chairman, Mr. Thompson, member of the subcommittee, Mr. DeFazio, Mr. Luan, and Mr. Cleaver. We thank you for your presence, and our guest, a former member of the Homeland Security Committee and this subcommittee, Mr. Markey. The subcommittee is meeting today to receive testimony on 100% air cargo screening. Can we secure America's skies? Our witnesses today will testify about TSA and industry's progress and challenges to meet the 9/11 Act's requirement to screen 100% of all passenger plane cargo by August 2010. Before I begin my opening statement, I would like to welcome the gentleman from Massachusetts, a former member of the subcommittee and a champion of cargo security, Mr. Markey. Without objection, it will be our privilege to authorize Mr. Markey to sit on the dais, provide an opening statement, and question our witnesses during the hearing today.
Madam Chair, I have no objections. I just wanted to ask the Chair's consideration should a member of the minority party wish to make an address to this committee or a 5-minute opening. I would hope that you would receive that request favorably. Thank you. Thank you
very much, Mr. Dent. Hearing no objection, so ordered. Today, this subcommittee will continue its commitment to robust oversight of one of the most important issues addressed by Congress in the 9/11 Act, the screening of cargo on commercial passenger aircraft. This is my second hearing on this issue as chairwoman of the subcommittee, which has jurisdiction over aviation security, and we will continue to monitor TSA's progress in screening cargo during the 111th Congress. I look forward to engaging with my colleagues on the subcommittee and learning from our witnesses about how TSA and industry are working together to achieve the cargo screening mandate. This mandate is a critical step towards securing aviation, and might I add, as I started out, it is important when Congress issues mandates, they are for the betterment of the American people, and that we'll work diligently to comply. The subcommittee is determined to work with the new administration and conduct thoughtful oversight to make sure that we can move forward and complete implementation of this essential element of the 9/11 Act. The logic is clear. If we screen passengers and their checked baggage, we must screen the other cargo on board the same aircraft. It's my intent to view a number of airports and to really see in action whether or not we are utilizing officers or, in fact, at these major airports, what are we doing to comply with the 100% screening. Section 1602 of the 9/11 Act established two deadlines. The first required screening of 50% of cargo on passenger planes by February 3, 2009, already passed. The second requires 100% screening by August 3, 2010. The February deadline is passed, as I indicated. Aside from receiving an email from TSA stating that it had begun to enforce the 50% screening requirement on air carriers, this subcommittee has not received any further, more detailed confirmation that this requirement is being satisfied. Today, we are more than a month past the deadline, and I was concerned when I read GAO's testimony, which states that TSA cannot verify that screening is being done at the mandated 50% level. Now, let me at least say to the two witnesses here, this is not an attempt to excoriate either one of you. We hope, as you will present us with very forthright testimony, it is an attempt to express, again, seemingly the word of the day, outrage. It fits quite squarely with actions of financial markets and what is happening here in the security area, which means that the word verify, just as there could be no explanation of Saturday night bonuses given out, there seems to be no explanation of you cannot verify. That's the word for me. This is not to say that TSA has not been working with industry stakeholders to fulfill the Section 1602 requirements. I know that it has made progress in this endeavor, but the question remains, can TSA positively verify that 50% of cargo on passenger planes as being screened, and can this be formally reported to Congress? That's our large question here today. Still, the most important thing is to achieve 100% screening by August 2010, and therefore needing to be able to verify the 50% so that we can move forward to the full 100% by August 2010. And this afternoon, we will also examine whether TSA is on track, again, to meet the 2010 deadline. The scope of this hearing includes reviewing the programs and regulations that have been put in place in its efforts to achieve 100% by TSA on cargo screening on passenger aircraft, exploring TSA compliance and verification standards for ensuring that screening is taking place, and evaluating DHS progress in certifying new and effective screening technologies. In addition, we want to know whether TSA has adequate resources and personnel to accomplish this mission. We want to know what kind of oversight and, yes, initiated or new legislative action needing to be taken by this subcommittee to draw upon the seriousness of our mission, along with the full committee. As we review TSA's efforts to meet the screening deadlines, we also want to understand the impact this is having on our industry partners, including air carriers, freight forwarders, and manufacturers, who must make significant investments, who have the greatest stake in an effective and efficient implementation process. The importance of achieving 100% cargo screening cannot be understated. As such, and based on what we learned here today, I will be asking GAO to conduct a follow-up assessment for the subcommittee to keep us informed about how the implementation process is progressing and alert us to any new hurdles that may arise. I hope that the ranking member, Mr. Dent, will join with me in making this request so that we can proceed in a bipartisan manner. I would like to thank our witnesses for coming today and presenting to us what I hope will be helpful in shedding light on this critical endeavor. I know that much work has been done, but there is still a lot more to be accomplished in order to achieve 100% screening by next summer. We're always reminded that we have not had a terrorist act on our soil since 2001. One, it gives us comfort, but then it gives those who believe that we focus too much on security and the securing of our homeland, or that we shouldn't worry about it, or why are you getting so excited? It gives them, I guess, the extra fodder for their belief. But I'm always mindful of our good Boy Scouts, and that is to make your camp better than you found it and to be prepared. We're not prepared. If we cannot verify 50%, then we are certainly not prepared. And any moment, a small package of any kind sent by anyone who endeavors to do this nation harm can again create the atmosphere for a terrorist act on our soil. It is well known from hearings that we have had that we have decentralized terrorism. They can be found anywhere. So I'm delighted that we have the opportunity to show that we mean business. All of the witnesses today are experienced, knowledgeable veterans of the aviation industry, and I look forward to hearing from all of you and working with you to make our skies more secure. At this time, without objection, I would like to enter into the record two statements. The first is by the Express Delivery and Logistics Association, and the second is from the Air Cargo Security Alliance. Express Delivery and Logistics Association, and second is by the Air Cargo Security Alliance. Is there any objection? Hearing no objection, so ordered. The chair now recognizes the ranking member, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Dent, for an opening statement. Mr. Dent.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Madam Chair. Today we plan on discussing the Transportation Security Administration's attempt to meet a congressionally mandated 100% air cargo screening requirement included in the implementing recommendations of the 9/11 Commission Act. This law requires, and I quote, not later than 3 years after the date of enactment, the Secretary of Homeland Security shall establish a system to screen 100% of cargo transported on passenger aircraft operated by an air carrier, close quote. At the outset, let me compliment the TSA on their hard work. The men and women of the TSA labor tirelessly to ensure that security of our traveling public, and quite frankly, air cargo security, has not always received the time, attention, or funding it deserves. So further, the Congress has seen fit to place upon you unrealistic mandates in order to score political points. While 100% screening never equals 100% security, I did vote for the passage of the 9/11 Commission Act, and despite these unrealistic 100% mandates, I will require the Department to meet the mandates of the law. I am therefore disappointed with what I perceive as the Department's intention to provide the appearance of meeting its security mandate without actually meeting, at least in my mind, the actual mandate. The TSA's use of fuzzy math to artificially inflate its aviation screening statistics, I think, is intellectually dishonest, and I look forward to hearing from our first panel on this matter. I'm also disappointed that with the 2010 deadline just a year off, the TSA is unable to tell me what consequences an inbound aircraft might be subject to if it is determined to possess a piece of freight that has not already been screened. If it were an international flight bound for the U.S., would it be diverted to another country? Would a domestic flight be required to land? What are the consequences of failing to comply with the law? Ultimately, I hope for an honest and open discussion about what challenges the TSA expects to encounter in implementing the air cargo screening requirements over the next 17 months. TSA has a relatively small number of certified cargo screening facilities and relatively few transportation security inspectors authorized to inspect and enroll these facilities. Perhaps the biggest hurdle is that the TSA has no clear way ahead in managing foreign air carriers bound for the United States with cargo. Much like the 100% screening requirement for maritime containerized cargo, screening air cargo overseas requires significant levels of international cooperation, which dramatically complicates the TSA's efforts to meet its congressional mandate. So I look forward to hearing from both panels on these many challenges and on the way ahead for TSA as it tries to meet this congressional mandate. I think this is a very important discussion to have, and I thank you, Madam Chair, for having this hearing today. And at this time, I would yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Thank you very much, Mr. Dent. The Chair now recognizes the Chairman of the full committee, the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Thompson, for an opening statement.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman, for convening this important hearing today. I also welcome our panel of witnesses, both the first and second, for bringing their important testimony to us. This afternoon's hearing will evaluate progress made by TSA in implementing the 9/11 Act's requirement to screen 100% of all cargo aboard passenger aircraft. Section 1602 of the 9/11 Act also requires TSA to screen 50% of all cargo aboard passenger aircraft by February 2009. I'd like to take this opportunity to applaud the efforts of my colleagues on this subcommittee and the full committee in championing this important mandate and ensuring that we take all necessary steps toward enhancing the nation's aviation security. After all, the 9/11 Commission report recommended that TSA intensify its efforts to identify, track, and appropriately screen potentially dangerous cargo in aviation. In an effort to fulfill this recommendation, Congress has provided TSA with the necessary tools and a great deal of flexibility. Today, I'd like to know if TSA can verify that it has met the 50% deadline and whether it will be able to meet the 100% deadline next year. Mr. Kelly, I'm particularly looking forward to your testimony. Not because this is your first time on the Hill, but I want to hear what you have to say. I'm interested in TSA's perspective on the challenges it faces in meeting the 100% deadline. As you know, I'm also interested in hearing about DHS's progress in exploring innovative technologies that can be applied to fulfill the requirements of this law. It is important to evaluate any existing research and coordinating efforts between TSA and industry. We need to ensure that the work and progress made by industry relevant to screening can be leveraged by TSA to effectively screen and detect explosives hidden in air cargo. Today, we'll also hear from stakeholders who have the concerns about TSA's plan to implement this mandate. This hearing is not just about TSA checking the box. It's about strengthening aviation security and protecting the traveling public. This hearing is also being hosted well in advance of the August 2010 deadline so that we can address the concerns of government and industry stakeholders early in the process and remedy or avert potential obstacles to implementation. Again, I thank the Chairwoman for hosting this important hearing and thank the witnesses again for appearing before us today.
I thank the Chairman of the full committee for his insightful remarks. Noting that the ranking member of the full committee, I believe, is held up in another committee, we will recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey, for a statement of 5 minutes.
And I thank the gentlelady for extending this courtesy to me. This is the first time in 7 years that I have not been a member of the Homeland Security Committee, and it is a great honor and privilege that you have extended to me to participate in today's hearing. As you know, on 9/11, there were 2 planes hijacked up in Boston that had 150 people on those 2 planes that were then flown into the World Trade Center. And obviously, that is still at the heart of my concern about these issues. Those 2 planes still, and all those people and their families who I knew who died that day still, live on with me in terms of making sure that we don't see another recurrence of that. In 2007, when Congress passed the landmark legislation to implement the recommendations of the 9/11 Commission, it included the mandate to screen 100% of the air cargo carried on passenger planes within 3 years, and 50% of cargo screened within 18 months. Now that last month's statutory deadline to screen 50% of cargo on passenger planes has passed, today's hearing, Madam Chair, is particularly timely and important. A year ago, Chairman Thompson and I requested that the GAO assess TSA's progress in implementing the cargo screening mandate to ensure that the agency's approach is consistent with congressional intent. I am pleased that today, Mr. Lord, you will provide GAO's preliminary findings and recommendations in this area. GAO's testimony raises several important questions about whether the system that the Bush administration developed to fulfill the 100% screening mandate will meet the requirements of the law. Specifically, GAO's testimony notes that 1, TSA cannot verify that it has met the February 2009 deadline for screening 50% of cargo on passenger planes as required by law. 2, TSA does not expect to achieve 100% screening of inbound air cargo, that is, cargo on passenger planes entering the United States from overseas by the mandated deadline of August of 2010. Inbound cargo is almost half of the total volume of cargo on passenger planes, accounting for 44% of the total, or 3.3 billion pounds of cargo each year. And third, the system developed by TSA relies heavily on shippers, freight forwarders, and others in the supply chain to screen cargo before it reaches the airport. However, as GAO has noted, there is a real risk that if these private sector firms decide not to participate in TSA's system, it would make it difficult, if not impossible, to meet the 100% mandate. These are critically important shortcomings in the implementation of this law that the Obama administration has inherited, but which it needs to move quickly to correct. TSA has a duty to ensure that the 100% screening mandate is met and that the level of security that's applied to air cargo is commensurate with the level of security applied to passengers' checked bags, pursuant to the law. Again, it's my great honor, Madam Chair, and I thank you, Mr. Dent, for the opportunity to testify. I have invested 7 years of my career in this provision, and it means a lot to me that the two of you, along with Chairman Thompson and the rest of the committee members, have allowed me to participate. Thank you.
Mr. Markey, we thank you for your testimony. The gentleman's time has expired. We thank you for your interest and ongoing interest in this very vital issue. Let me also acknowledge a member of our committee, Mr. Massif, presence here today, and we thank him so very much. We look forward to engagement of all of our members. Again, I welcome our panel of witnesses. Our first witness is Mr. Edward Kelly, General Manager for Cargo at TSA. Mr. Kelly joined TSA in September 2006 and brings with him a wealth of knowledge and over 30 years of experience in the supply chain and cargo industry. In his current capacity as General Manager, he manages a $70 million budget with a staff of 55 transportation security experts, program managers, and contractors. Our second witness, Stephen Lord, is the Director of GAO's Homeland Security and Justice Issues Division and is responsible for directing numerous GAO engagements on aviation and surface transportation issues. Mr. Lord was a key member of the 2007 Iraq Benchmarks Assessment Team that received a GAO Integrity Award for exceptional analysis of the Iraq government's progress in meeting 18 legislative, security, and economic benchmarks, which I believe would make him quite appropriately trained for the challenge we have before us. Without objection, the witnesses' full statements will be inserted in the record. I now ask each witness to summarize his statement for 5 minutes. Mr. Kelly, we thank you for your service to this nation. We thank you for the 30 years that you bring to the Department of Homeland Security in serving the nation, and we look forward to the concept of fixing our problems together. You are recognized, Mr. Kelly, for 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Jackson Lee, Ranking Member Dent, Chairman Thompson, Mr. Markey, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. I am pleased to be here today to discuss progress by the Transportation Security Administration on the air cargo requirements of implementing recommendations of the 9/11 Commission Act of 2007. The 9/11 Act gives TSA the responsibility to ensure that the airline industry screens 100% of the cargo on passenger aircraft by August 2010, with an interim milestone of 50% by February of 2009. First, I want to assure the subcommittee that all indications are that the cargo industry has met the February deadline. This week, TSA began receiving from the airlines February's cargo screening data, and we will validate that the 50% screening milestone was, in fact, achieved. We will share the results with you by mid-April. Thank you for your patience. To achieve this milestone, TSA and our industry partners put in a great deal of effort to creatively rethink the logistics of air cargo security. Together, we have dramatically changed air cargo operations. The key elements to TSA's approach is the Certified Cargo Screening Program. This program screens cargo at the most efficient and effective point in the supply chain. It provides optimal security with minimal economic disruption. TSA recognizes that air cargo is a vital part of our economy, and this approach to security supports the financial health of the airline industry. Another step in achieving 100% screening is the requirement for all airlines operating narrow-bodied passenger aircraft from U.S. airports to screen 100% of the cargo transported on these aircraft. I am pleased to report that TSA achieved this milestone in October of 2008, a full 22 months before the deadline. 100% of the cargo on 96% of the flights originating in the United States is now screened. This point is worth emphasizing. 85% of the passengers flying each day from U.S. airports are on planes where all the cargo has been fully screened. We have improved security significantly. A number of challenges remain as we move toward the goal of 100% screening. The characteristics of cargo are vastly different from those of checked baggage. For example, 75% of air cargo is tendered on skids that cannot be screened with existing TSA-approved equipment. TSA is working with the DHS Science and Technology Directorate to develop technology adapted to the cargo screening environment. We are testing technologies not previously used to screen cargo for explosives, such as metal detectors, vapor trace detectors, radio wave devices, and handheld detection equipment. Another challenge is to develop screening requirements for air cargo inbound from foreign countries. To date, industry has accomplished 50% system-wide screening for international inbound air cargo. However, TSA cannot implement a security regimen in a foreign country without extensive cooperative planning with and acceptance by our international partners. Given these challenges, TSA does not expect that a 100% screening will be attainable for inbound cargo on passenger aircraft by August of 2010. Nonetheless, significant efforts towards reaching the 100% mark are ongoing. Through bilateral and multilateral arrangements, a proposed amendment to the International Civil Aviation Organization standards, and partnering with CBP to use its automated tracking system, we are improving security on inbound cargo. With the cooperation of the entire air cargo community, we are well on our way to achieving 100% air cargo screening mandate for the 9/11 Act for domestic cargo. We appreciate the important oversight of Congress and notably the support of this subcommittee. We will continue to work closely with the Government Accountability Office represented here today. We will continue to be transparent and to keep you informed and on progress. Finally, I would like to recognize the efforts of the industry and the TSA employees who have worked tirelessly on developing innovative solutions to a daunting task. I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Let me thank you for your testimony. I now recognize Mr. Lord to summarize his statement for 5 minutes. Mr. Lord, you're recognized.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman, Ranking Member Dent, members of the subcommittee, and Chairman Thompson. I'm pleased to be here today to discuss TSA's efforts to meet the congressional mandate for screening air cargo. This is an important issue as each year over 7 billion pounds of air cargo is flown on U.S. passenger flights. As you know, Congress has mandated the establishment of a system to screen 50% of cargo by February 2009 and 100% by August 2010. Since TSA is addressing this mandate through 2 separate systems, my testimony will discuss TSA's efforts to meet the screening mandate for domestic and inbound cargo separately. Today, I would like to discuss 2 issues. First, TSA's progress in meeting the screening mandate as it applies to domestic cargo. Second, the challenges that TSA and industry stakeholders may face in meeting the mandate, including challenges related to inbound cargo. To its credit, TSA has taken several important steps to meet the screening mandate. First, TSA established a new screening requirement for air carriers. For example, effective October 2008 and several months before the first mandated deadline, TSA required 100% screening of cargo carried on narrow-body passenger aircraft such as Boeing 737s. These narrow bodies carry about 26% of the cargo and most of the passengers on domestic flights, as Mr. Kelly mentioned in his testimony. Second, TSA revised or eliminated most of its screening exemptions for domestic, but not inbound air cargo. Third, TSA created a voluntary program known as the Certified Cargo Screening Program to allow screening to take place by freight forwarders, shippers, and others before it is consolidated and delivered to the airport. Finally, among other steps, TSA established a technology pilot to allow industry participants to test approved screening technology. In our recent discussions, TSA officials stated that they are confident that the 50% screening mandate, as it applies to domestic air cargo, has been achieved based on the feedback they received from industry stakeholders. However, it is important to note that TSA does currently not have an empirical basis for verifying that these mandated screening levels have been met. According to TSA, air carriers will provide the first set of screening data this month, and by next month, TSA will be in a position to determine whether the mandated screening levels are being met. Until it completes this important analysis, TSA cannot verify that the mandated screening levels established by Congress are in fact being achieved. A related question concerns TSA's current screening process. While the details of its screening requirements are considered sensitive security information, the implications are not. Thus, I'm hoping that today's hearing will help us better understand how TSA's efforts to meet the screening mandate may result in variations in the percentage of cargo screened on individual passenger flights. I will now discuss the potential challenges that TSA faces in meeting the screening mandate. First, although voluntary industry participation in the certified screening program is vital to its success, it's unclear whether TSA will be able to attract the necessary industry participation. This is an important issue as TSA estimates that freight forwarders and shippers will conduct the majority of screening by the August 2010 deadline. Second, TSA faces a number of challenges related to technology. For example, TSA is evaluating the effectiveness of several technologies at the same time that screening entities are using these technologies to screen air cargo. Third, TSA also faces challenges overseeing the certified cargo screening program due to the size of the inspection workforce and the thousands of newly regulated entities that may join the program. Finally, with respect to inbound cargo, TSA does not expect, I repeat, does not expect to achieve 100% screening of inbound air cargo by the mandated deadline of August 2010. This is due in part to existing inbound screening exemptions and to challenges TSA faces in harmonizing air cargo standards with those of other foreign nations. Madam Chairwoman, this concludes my statement. I look forward to answering any questions that you or other members of the committee may have, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to appear before your subcommittee today.
I thank the gentleman for his testimony, and I thank both of the witnesses for their testimony. I remind each member that he or she will have 5 minutes to question the panel. I now recognize myself for questions. When I make that statement, I think there is probably an appropriate sigh that might come after that before I even enter into the questions, because we're all here to try to make government work. And I mentioned the word verify, Mr. Lord, quite frequently in my testimony, so I really think I'm going to go directly to you. The verifying question gives me pause. The formula for verifying gives me added pause. And I'd like to have you restate your concerns about verification, whether or not it is the approach, the formula that is being used, the cooperation of our aviation industry. So I've given you 3 points there. And then I want to go to a point that was raised in a letter that we received from TSA that talks about commensurate. Were you able to determine what level of screening? Does it equate to a passenger luggage, or are we at a lesser level than that? Did your research or your investigation take you to that level? And if it did not, then I think I'm going to add another aspect to our inquiry when we seek to ask you for more review. Mr. Lord?
Sure, I'd be glad to respond to that. First phase of our assignment, we focused on what data the agency had in place to verify compliance with the legislative mandate. We spent a lot of time trying to understand their system, and to its credit, TSA is putting in place a system that they expect will help answer that question next month. The broader issue of whether the entire process provides a level of security commensurate with checked baggage, that's something we're looking at. We're consulting closely with TSA, our counsel's office, their counsel's office. That's the I understand that's the overall.
So we don't have an answer to
We
that at
don't
this
have an
point.
answer at this time.
And is the data that you looked at, is that a degree of software that you find adequate for this review?
Excuse me?
The data that you looked at, does that involve software that you think is adequate for this review?
I think they've designed a system, they have initial reports streaming in, and now it's up to them to, number one, judge whether the data is reliable, scrub the data, and then analyze it and report.
Where does the data come from? Is this submissions by airline
Yes.
companies?
Yes.
All right, and what about the question of verifying? Where are we in that? That was a question that you raised in your testimony or in your report.
Yeah, that's our job. We help this committee conduct oversight, and we typically focus on the data. We're trained to study the data, trends in data, and our position is we haven't seen the data. So,
But you were also saying you question whether TSA can verify what is going on, that they're doing 50%.
that's true. We typically look at the system, the agencies that put into place to judge performance. That's the basic point of our testimony. They're in the process of putting into place a system, so even though they're confident they have met the threshold, there's no analytical basis to determine that at this point.
Well,
No data.
we thank you. We sort of left out, we're sort of out there, kind of have the wind blowing. Mr. Kelly, why don't you tell me about your assessment as to whether TSA will be able to meet the 100% screening mandate, which in essence I'm sort of putting the cart before the horse, but where are you now specifically with respect to the 50% deadline that was on, that just passed in February?
Madam Chairwoman, we have, in order to ascertain whether the airlines have achieved the requirement of 50% screening, what we have done is we have done polls of the airlines. We've talked to each of the airline security, the people at the security part of the airlines, to discuss with them what their airlines are doing and are they achieving the goal. And two, we have our inspectors, our cargo inspectors out at the airline facilities, spot checking each of the individual airlines to make sure that they are complying with the.
So is this manual? Airlines are giving you written pieces of paper, or somebody is there standing in front of your inspector and giving them information?
It's both. The airlines feed to us the data, which we've asked them to furnish to us, which is the screening data, which we will take and we're putting it into a system to accumulate it by airport, by airline. And we are also sending our inspectors out to observe what is being done at each of the facilities that they're inspecting.
Mr. Kelly, I know that you've just come on in the last 2 or 3 years. You have an Office of Science and Technology. There have been a lot of small businesses that have offered new technology that would have led up to being prepared for this challenge. Has anyone put on your desk new technologies at small businesses, such as one that we'll have as a witness, but in any event, that's come to your attention that you could help utilize or help airlines utilize so this process could move forward?
Yes. We have been coordinating with the Science and Technology Directorate to look at what I would consider non-standard screening technologies. It's not X-ray. It doesn't have to be X-ray or EDS. What we're looking at is things such as metal detectors to screen cargo, produce. And
Are any of those in place now?
we have in place, no, there are none in place. We have them at the Science and Technology facilities.
I would appreciate it if you could gather that and provide this committee with a list of what you're looking at and the progress of their being able to be utilized, working with your Science and Technology office.
Absolutely, yes.
And let me just finish in my question here. I'm still trying to hear of the 50% deadline verification that is due this past February. Where exactly is TSA in that ability to verify?
We are in the process today or this week of receiving the data from the airlines, and we're putting it into a system, and we will analyze the output of that system and then report it to you by mid-April of next year.
Is your airline selective, or all of the airlines that we know are flying in the nation's skies today?
It's every airline at every airport by month.
All right. We will probably have another inquiry to get that list and
We'd be
some
happy.
format. I'm going to try and formulate the question, but my time has expired, and let me now recognize the distinguished ranking member, Mr. Dent of Pennsylvania, for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Kelly, in your written statement, you indicate that the industry is, and I quote, currently screening at least 50% of air cargo transported on passenger aircraft on flights originating in the United States, close quote. When compared to the actual language of the 9/11 Act, your statement includes some qualifications that I wish to explore a little bit further here today. Why does your statement include qualifications such as originating in the United States? Does the TSA not include in its calculations air cargo transported by international flights?
We do. And we state that we have met the 50% requirement for both inbound international freight and in freight originating in the United States, outbound from the U.S., outbound from U.S. airports.
Outbound. Okay. Based on TSA statistics, 50,000 tons of air cargo are transported daily. Of these, 7,500 tons are carried on passenger aircraft. How much is carried on inbound foreign air carriers?
Those numbers, those numbers you're referencing are outbound U.S. originated cargo. The total cargo moving on passenger airplanes is about 7 billion pounds a year. 4 billion of that is outbound from the United States. 3 billion is inbound to the United States.
So 3 billion inbound.
Yes.
Okay. When TSA provides the Congress its statistics for the amount of cargo screened, do you include this exempted cargo, or do you take that off the top and not include it in your calculations?
We include all cargo, including cargo that's subject to alternate means.
So TSA is required to provide an inspection regime commensurate with that covering passenger baggage. How does TSA propose to ensure that foreign air carriers bound for the United States provide this commensurate level of security for inbound cargo?
TSA is working with our foreign partners to harmonize our programs so that their level of screening is equal to ours. And until they get to that, then what they have to follow is our model security program, which we verified through our international inspection force.
Okay. I'd like to get to the issue of harmonization here in just a second. I guess I'll turn to Mr. Lord on that subject. I'm concerned that no matter what the Herculean efforts of TSA may apply, the statutory requirements for TSA's mandate to truly screen 100% of all air cargo will not and cannot be achieved for many years because of the need for significant international discussions or harmonization. Would you agree that TSA will not meet its statutory requirement for the screening of 100% of all air cargo?
I'd have to agree with you, yes.
I would have just asked Mr. Lord that question. I'm sorry, Mr. Kelly.
Yes, TSA has already informed us as part of our ongoing engagement. They don't plan to meet 100% deadline.
Yeah, and do you agree that TSA's most significant hurdle to meeting the congressional mandate for 100% of all air cargo will be the necessary cooperation with foreign governments? Mr. Lord.
Well, in our testimony, we actually identified 2 issues, addressing the exemption issue and harmonization of standards with other nations. They're both very important issues that need to be addressed before they will be able to achieve the 100%.
So then, I guess, well, the TSA has been throwing around percentages, but these have included a series of qualifiers. They use words like domestic or outbound. Do these qualifiers mask the actual percentages being reached by the industry? And to Mr. Lord, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Could
sorry,
you
these
repeat the
questions-
question again, sir?
Yeah, these, the question I was talking about these qualifiers that the TSA has been throwing around percentages. and they have these various series of qualifiers. They use words like domestic or outbound. And do these qualifiers mask the actual percentage being reached by the industry?
I don't think those two qualifiers do. Outbound, they basically segregate the data, domestic, and which includes flights originating in the United States, flying out of the country, then inbound. But they have, it's a separate set of issues for both. But those are commonly understood terms, as I understand it.
And I guess
I think the issue is, though, to what extent the inbound cargo traffic is exempt from screening. You have to understand the significance of these exemptions to really understand whether they're going to be able to achieve the 100% on the inbound.
well, then I guess then how much cargo is being exempted, and how much is being screened by means other than what is listed in the 9/11 Act?
Well, that's a great question. We asked TSA what, for example, regarding the inbound, what % of the cargo is currently exempted from screening? And they reported us they didn't have the data at their disposal to answer that. Even if they did, I should caution that's sensitive, considered sensitive security information, exact percentages. We wouldn't be able to discuss that in an open forum anyway, the significance of the exemptions.
Okay, and Mr. Kelly, did you want to address that last question on how much of the cargo is being exempted and how much is being screened by means other than what's
Just
in the
like
9/11 Act?
Mr. Lord said, that's sensitive information, and we'd be happy to talk about it offline, but we can't talk about it in open.
Okay, I'd love to have that opportunity at some point, Madam Chair, and I realize my time has expired.
Gentleman's time has expired, and we will engage TSA in a briefing along with other security organizations on this issue. It's now my privilege to recognize the full committee chairman, Mr. Thompson, for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mr. Kelly, you mentioned that with the narrow body amendment, TSA is screening cargo on flights carrying 85% of the public. Can you tell me what lessons learned, if any, the department has obtained from that?
Well, I think what it's done is number one, we've learned a lesson that we could make a small step in the process and make a huge step in securing the traveling public. I think that's one of the key lessons that we've learned. The other lesson is that while this may be low-hanging fruit, it is probably not, it doesn't foretell the level of complexity and difficulty that's going to be encountered by the air cargo industry in getting from the 50% to the 100%.
Well, since you raised to 50%, please tell the committee why did TSA miss the February deadline? Well,
Mr. Thompson, I would argue that we didn't miss the deadline. We've missed the ability to report on it. But we consider, and all indications is that the airline did in fact, the airlines have in fact accomplished the 50% screening.
Okay. Mr. Lord, do you agree with what Mr. Kelly just said?
I have a lot of respect for Mr. Kelly, and what he said may turn out to be accurate. But at this time, since I'm from GAO, we're trying to look at the data. My simple retort is, show me the data.
Did you see anything?
We know they're in the process of gathering it and analyzing it, but as of yet, if you ask me today, have they met the threshold or not, we simply don't know.
So I take, Mr. Kelly, you disagree with Mr. Lord?
I would never disagree with Mr. Lord.
Well,
no, really, as I said, we feel that the industry has accomplished the milestone, and we will be able to verify that to the committee by mid-April.
So in the absence of submitting the information in a timely manner, you will stipulate that you missed the congressional mandated February deadline?
So stipulated.
Thank you. From the standpoint of technology, what has been your experience within TSA for how long it takes new ideas to get through the system and implement it?
I don't know if I've been around long enough to really answer that question accurately, but I find it that most of the research that's been done for screening has been centered around the efforts of screening baggage and passengers at the checkpoints. There has been very little time and money devoted to screening of cargo. Now, in the last 6 months, we have had a lot of discussions with the Science and Technology Group and our own technology force internally to TSA, and they recognize where the shortfalls are, and they are making a concerted effort to try to find technologies that will fill the gaps that we have in the cargo screening theater.
Are you involved in that process at all?
Absolutely.
Even though you haven't been around a long time, and you know that this mandate for screening is upon you, can you give the committee a guesstimate of how long it takes for new technology to get through TSA's system of review?
Honestly, I can't. I don't have that information.
Okay. Can you then tell me, is it an issue that you don't have the money to do it, or you don't have the staff, or both, or why you can't provide that?
Well, I think, as I said, I think TSA was more focused on baggage screening than they were on cargo screening, and that has now shifted with the introduction of the 9/11 Act. That emphasis has shifted, and then they're now looking at the issues related to screening of air cargo, and I think what we've tried to encourage with the Science and Technology Directorate is to look outside the box and look for innovative ways of screening cargo. And I think they are right now doing that, and hopefully we will find technologies that are good.
Well, I beg the indulgence of the committee, Madam Chair. Can you provide the committee with whatever those new ideas or new technologies that you presently have under review?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I thank the chairman. I think we have asked the same question, so I hope that we will be able to put that in writing so you can understand it appropriately. I think we have enough time to yield again, so let me indicate the chair will now recognize other members for questions they may wish to ask the witnesses in accordance with our committee rules and practice. I'll recognize members who are present at the start of the hearing based on the seniority on the subcommittee, alternating between majority and minority. Those members coming in later will be recognized in order of their arrival. We are now recognizing Mr. Luan for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My questions fall exactly in line with where Chairman Thompson left off in talking specifically about the technology and some of the advances that we could be using to assist you in meeting these goals. In your testimony, Mr. Lord, it very clearly states, as you pointed out, that TSA faces a number of challenges related to technology. You highlighted the effectiveness while TSA contractors are utilizing the technologies before standards have been met. In utilizing technology and creating these standards with technological advances with other nations as we move forward. My question specifically, I guess, Mr. Kelly, is what can be done to be able to utilize the technology that we're using here in the United States to be able to create these standards and formalize these standards with other nations?
Well, one thing we're doing in working with the Science and Technology Group is we've set up, I guess what I would call live labs at airline facilities, one in New York and one in Miami, where we are actually placing the technologies that we hope will work with screening cargo in these facilities so that we can test it on a live environment rather than do it in a lab. We find that if you're working in a lab, people wear white coats and white gloves and there's no dirt around, and whereas if you could put it in a cargo facility, it's going to be what's actually going to happen with the equipment, and we get a better result on the effectiveness of that equipment.
Okay, and Mr. Lords, again, you know, your testimony points out that the 9/11 Commission Act defines screening for purposes of the air cargo screening mandate as a physical examination or non-intrusive methods for assessing whether cargo poses a threat to transportation security, with examples of various technologies. I'd go back, Mr. Kelly, to maybe embrace some of the work that's being done with some of the labs or in a lab environment. Los Alamos National Labs, which is a national laboratory in my district, is developing a variety of technologies that could make air cargo screening more effective and affordable. The national labs are developing technologies that will improve the safety and affordability of air cargo, screening, and air travel in general. For example, the MagVis scanner is capable of identifying liquids and gels within sealed cargo or baggage using technology similar to the magnetic resonance imaging systems. LANL is also developing the advanced active interrogation systems and advanced spectroscopic portal monitors, which are capable of detecting nuclear and radiological materials and can be adapted for cargo screening. My specific question is how are, and this would be to both of you, how specifically is TSA or other organizations incorporating the new innovative technologies being developed by national laboratories across the country in its protection of air passengers?
Well, I can't speak for the S&T Directorate, but I know that they are very heavily involved with the various laboratories throughout the United States in what they are developing at those laboratories.
And Madam Chair, what I would like to do, if at all possible, is submit to the committee, and maybe we can submit it to TSA as a recommendation, various technologies that are being explored by national laboratories around the country that maybe can assist us in meeting these goals. And I know we're short on time, Madam Chair, so with that, I yield back.
We'd be happy to receive that from the gentleman. I'm not sure if he has a list now that he'd like to submit into the record. Or
Later.
All right, so the gentleman will submit it later. Let me yield to the distinguished gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Cleaver. Ms. Cleaver, we are trying to get you in and allow these gentlemen to depart. You yield it at this time. Thank you, Ms. Cleaver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Kelly, my concern is that we have so many challenges, it seems, still before us. We're told that there are not enough inspectors. Is that accurate?
Well, I think presently we have enough inspectors to do at the level of screening that we're at today. But as the system grows, as the certified cargo screening system grows, we will have to reevaluate the needs of our inspectors and staff accordingly.
Now, if we don't have the sophisticated screening equipment that would allow us to actually screen crates with cargo over 10 feet long, then it means, this is a question, it means that we would have to do it manually, that we would have to actually open up crates and screen the material. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that means...
But also, if the facility that created the goods was a certified cargo screening facility, then they would screen it before they closed up the crate, and it would be considered screened at that point.
Okay, now, but how do we, I mean, it seems like we're going to have a traffic jam you know, as we move toward fulfilling the congressional mandate, I mean, you're saying you have enough people at this moment to do the work, but we're talking just another year, and I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated now in my questioning because I know we have to go vote, and I'm not able to get into the depths of this whole issue.
Well, if you want to, you know, we could meet with you and talk to you.
Yeah, I'm very much interested in the problems or the apparent problems of lack of inspectors, and particularly in light of the fact that you have a short timeline.
Well, the TSA inspectors don't screen cargo. What they do is they are inspectors to make sure that the airlines or the screening facilities comply with the regulation. So they're not physically screening the cargo.
Then who is?
The airlines will do it, the freight forwarders will do it, the shippers will do it, manufacturers.
And we're just estimating that we're at 50%. We're not.
No.
We know.
Well, we will verify that and advise you mid-April as to the status of where we are at.
But it won't be an estimate.
It won't be an estimate, no.
Okay. Madam Chair, thank you. I yield back the balance of my time.
I thank the gentleman.
Ask one really quick question.
Be happy.
Sure, you can leave, and I'll take over temporary chair if you're worried about
I'll be happy to yield to the gentleman. We have two of us have clarifying questions. We're trying to dismiss
Right.
dismiss them.
I just want to express a concern. I'd love to follow up with Mr. Kelly, that's all.
Gentleman from Oregon is recognized.
And I'd love to follow up with you. It's a particular parochial concern, all politics local, has to do with cherries and the sort of improbabilities and possibilities of how we're going to screen the 2 months' worth of intense cherry exports we have by air freight every year, very valuable commodity. And I just need to follow up with you and see if there's some way we can deal with this, because right now we don't think it's going to work.
All right, fine.
I'll have my staff follow up quite soon.
We've had a lot of discussions.
Yeah, and we'll point at what we think are still some of the problems. But you're one person. You're one person out there in the whole Northwest is doing a great job, but he probably needs to be cloned, duplicated, replicated. He needs help.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Mr. DeVazio, let's get his name if he or she that is doing a great job. We want to make sure we do clone him. I have a clarifying question, and then we will dash. Thank you very much, Mr. DeVazio. We will dash and be able to dismiss this particular, so I'll yield myself just in a brief moment. Ms. Kelly, let me understand, have you conceded or admitted that you missed the deadline of February 9th, and 1, and 2, you're not verifying 50%? Have you conceded to both of those points?
No.
You missed the deadline of February 9th to meet 50%, and you also saying you are not able to verify 50% cargo inspection. Is that what you're saying to us today?
We are in the process of verifying the 50% cargo.
But right now, today, you cannot verify that.
Cannot verify it, no.
And Mr. Lord, what did you say? You are agreeing that they can't verify it. Do you expect they'll ever be able to verify it?
I said, I indicated they're in the process of verifying. They can't do it today.
Pardon me?
I indicated they're in the process of verifying, but as of today, they can't tell you whether they've met it or not.
All right. And last point, Mr. Kelly, on airlines, are you saying airlines are cooperating, giving you information, or you're getting information from them?
They are cooperating, and they're feeding the information to us.
Okay. I'd like to get, again, I think I asked a question, list of the airlines, and we'll pursue that at a later time. I yield to the gentleman.
Thank you.
Mr. Dent of Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very quickly, Mr. Kelly, do you consider exempted cargo when conducting your statistical analysis?
We include all cargo in the base of what we're to how we get to the 50%. We include all cargo.
Including exempted cargo?
Yes.
Okay. And then without going into detail, do you right now know the amount of cargo you exempted in 2008 from screening, yes or no?
No.
Okay. So I guess the question then is, how is that possible?
Well, I mean, I don't know, and I don't know if I can find out, but I could look to see.
Okay, I would appreciate you following up. You have to go run the vote, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dent. There being no further questions for our first panel, I thank the witnesses for appearing before the subcommittee today. Again, they are great public servants. We appreciate that. The members of the subcommittee may have additional questions for you, and we ask that you respond to them expeditiously in writing. We now will ask that you graciously accept the fact that this committee is in recess. When we return, we will start with our second panel. Committee now stands in recess.